Welcome back. You have just tuned in to Women's AM. This morning, I'm joined by Sister Saima, Sister Nusrat, and our special guest this morning is Sister Farzana Alam. Welcome back, Farzana. Jazakallah khair for joining us on the show this morning. It's really great to have you here with all the expertise that you're going to bring to this topic. Obviously, in your role as a cat distribution officer, and as well, I know you deal with a hostel, a women's hostel. So can you tell us a little bit about where the need for this came from?
Yeah, well, we actually have 3 women's hostels in the UK. One is in Manchester, one is in Birmingham, and one is in London for women, single women. And what it is that we sort of noticed that there was a need for Muslim women who had been in situations, really difficult situations, where they've got no family, they've got no friends, they've got nowhere to go. Some of these women don't speak English as a first language, so they feel kind of lost a little bit. So what it is that we started hearing about these situations, and the more you hear about something, that's when you realise there's an actual need
for it. Yeah,
absolutely, because sometimes we live in a little bubble where we think,
yes,
if nothing's happening to me, it's not really happening.
Yeah,
it's not there.
Unfortunately, that's true.
We see messages, you know, this person needs help, this person needs... How? We don't really believe it sometimes, you know? Yeah.
And I think things you need are kind of official means to help these people.
Absolutely.
You know, it's all very well kind of, you know, sort of one night, you know, one donation here or there, but it needs a kind of long-term thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we aim to do. I mean, at the shelters at National Zakat Foundation, we aim to have a sort of support service. So as soon as you come into the shelter, there's a support, so you're independent again, inshallah. And, you know, these women, they need a bit of counselling, they need a bit of guidance.
So what kind of women, you know, you use the facilities at the shelter?
Yeah, we have women from all sorts of, you know, you won't even believe some of the cases that we come across. It's just really, really saddening to hear.
Yeah, very varied, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll touch more upon this in the discussion as well. So thank you very much for sharing a little bit about your work with us. We're now going to go straight to her views, where today we are discussing the ostracised Muslim woman. There are many women in the Muslim community who have been abandoned. For what reason, you may ask? For being divorced, marrying into a different race, not being able to have children, and even embracing Islam. Today we look at why we as a community have let such people down and how we need to change some attitudes prevalent in our own community. As always, this is a live discussion, so please let us know what you think. The number to call is on your screen now, or why not tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM. So, Sister Farzana, I'm going to come to you first. So, how common, actually, is this issue of you know, women feeling ostracised in our community?
It's extremely common. I think everyone, there's no doubt about it. You know, the calls that I receive at work anyway, day in, day out, there's women that have suffered from domestic violence is one of them.
Yeah.
You know, and they just don't know who to turn to anymore. Women that are in debt, single mothers. There's so many reasons why women are ostracised, which shouldn't be the case, really.
Yeah.
Because as a community, we should stick together. You know, that's what Islam teaches us.
Absolutely, absolutely. How long have you worked in this field, if you don't mind me asking?
Since September, so,
And were you surprised when you saw the need, how great the need is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was definitely, you know, the calls that I received, very upset women, crying. You know, they need, sometimes all they need is a bit of counselling. Or to talk to someone, to have someone hear them and say, it's okay, you know, we'll help you through this, inshallah.
Yeah.
And that's what people are not getting.
Yeah, I know, it's devastating, isn't it? Like you say, as a community, particularly Islamically, this is what, you know, we're told to do, isn't it? To look after people, to look after our neighbours. And, you know, unfortunately, we still see this issue of ostracisation coming up again and again.
It's an issue, actually, that's something that can't really be measured, or at least when you try to measure it statistically, it's very hard to ascertain quantitative information on it. But in the qualitative sense, you get women sharing their experiences mainly online, documentaries, blogging about it. So that's mainly due to the diversity of the media that's been helping get these women's, or amplify these women's voices. We find that particularly the issue of homelessness is something that Muslim women face, and homelessness may be due to domestic violence, due to being divorced, or other reasons, even prostitution. We find that women are being made homeless, as your organisation deals with that, and how they provide temporary accommodation for that. But when we find the examples of these kind of women, we hear examples of one sister who at the age of 19 had to leave home and was made homeless because she wanted to go to university and her parents didn't want that. We see people also being ostracised because they may have diseases such as HIV and AIDS. This is something within the Muslim community that isn't talked about very much, because some people still see it as a taboo, but it's a reality of our system. And according to the UN Global AIDS Project in 2013, within the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, 260,000 people were suffering from HIV and AIDS.
Wow, so that is, you know, that is a huge problem.
I think what even exacerbates the problem even more is when we develop a mentality of not wanting to talk about this even more. And some of the attitudes that they've received by some members of the Muslim community is sometimes very horrible. I mean, some people in the Muslim community have about as much compassion as a school of piranhas.
Well, do you know what? I think actually you've raised a good point. Talking about an issue is the first way to, you know, finding a solution, actually being able to deal with it. But I think something that we see far more regularly, you know, is divorce. And we do see that, and unfortunately, within our community, we're unable to kind of deal with this in a compassionate way. Why is it such a taboo?
I'm actually kind of surprised that it is still a taboo.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd expect something like this from, you know, a long time ago. But Islam has shown us that being a divorced woman, it's not, like, divorce is not the end of everything.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes women have to, there is no other option. You know, the husband and wife are not getting along. They're not compatible. It's simple reasons like that. It's not, it shouldn't be seen, women shouldn't be forced to be in a relationship where they're not happy. Similarly for men. They shouldn't be made to, because of the community, but the thing is, they stay in these relationships, which are often detrimental to their health, to their mental well-being. And they stay in the relationships because they know that the community outside are not going to be willing to hear them. And people isolate themselves from this divorced woman because they don't want to get involved or they don't want to be associated, which I don't understand as well.
Yeah, I don't understand. I think it's shocking, really. You know, something that it does happen a lot, and we kind of should be able to deal with it, but unfortunately this isn't the case.
Yeah, I think divorce is a taboo in our community because it's seen as something shameful. I do think this has come from a certain cultural mindset, particularly in the subcontinent. Particularly, I think the people that suffer the most in a divorce is the women, because men come out relatively unscathed after a divorce. You know, there's no blame put upon him, there's not even any questioning or anything, it's the woman. And particularly Muslim women are seen as, they're labelled as bad women, or there's something wrong with her, or she was disobedient, or, you know, she's deviant or corrupt or something like that. And people, you know, I've heard sisters say that, look, for the protection of my own family, I don't mix with these type of women. What does that mean? What exactly are you thinking she's going to do? You don't even know her circumstance. You don't know the reality. You're assuming, which is haram. And, you know, one of the rights of a believer is that you should always think the best and the highest of a believer until you're proven wrong. So I do think that this is cultural mentality that causes divorced women to be ostracized and labelled as bad people.
So we keep talking about this idea of, you know, culturally how we deal with it, but Islamically, how should we be dealing with this issue of divorce and women being looked after post-divorce?
Well, the Prophet ﷺ, he did marry divorced women, So first and foremost, we should all be quite embarrassed at the fact that we would insult or look down upon a woman that the Prophet ﷺ would have chose for himself. So that's a bit obscure and a bit weird. So that's the first thing. Second of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself in the Quran has dedicated a chapter to divorce. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows can happen in relationships. It's not a nice thing, but you know, Islam is a complete system. Divorce is not something that has to end horribly and lead to more horrible times in your life. It's supposed to be something that benefits the people involved, particularly the children. When two people aren't getting along and they're fighting, it can have very adverse effects on the children. It's sometimes a blessing, and the best thing to do is to go your separate ways and now you can actually be amicable with each other because you're still Muslims.
With the Sahabas, you know, they would actually marry and divorce quite frequently. But when divorce happened, you know, the two parties would part in kindness and amicably. You know, it wouldn't get messy, and you know, that is a real lesson to us. That's your brother,
that's your sister still, and they still have rights.
Exactly, absolutely. Sister, we have a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sultana.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome to the show. I understand you have a comment about divorce.
Inshallah. I just wanted to say, you know, with our parents' generation and the older generation, I don't think they actually have the knowledge in how to deal with divorced women. So that's maybe something that everyone needs to look into. Maybe they need to know how to deal with divorced women and women who are ostracized within the society. Because our parents' generation, it was a case of put up and shut up. They got on with married life, whether it is domestic violence, whether it is, you know, in-law problems. So, you know, they were just patient with it because they didn't know what else to do. And I think they still don't know what else to do. So when the daughters are coming home saying, I don't get along with my husband, they don't know what to do because they didn't know what to do themselves.
Exactly.
And I just wanted to say that. Jazakallah khair.
Absolutely. Jazakallah for that comment, Sister Sultana. A really important point that's been made by our caller there, saying that, you know, it's a kind of generational thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Sister Salma, what's your sort of take on the comment?
I think it's so... The older generation see it as that my child was rejected. There's something wrong with my child, and she's been handed back, particularly if you're a girl, yeah?
Yes.
You know, it's seen as like... And she's like used now, yeah? She's like second-hand, and, you know, who's going to want her now? I'm being quite blunt about this, because this is how people describe divorced women, yeah? That she is now, you know, who's going to want her? She's been with somebody else, and oh, she's got kids as well. Oh my God, her life is over. So this is all cultural, and we need to go back to how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala view her at the end of the day? She didn't do wrong. The man didn't do wrong. You know, and maybe it's the best thing for their deen. Two people can be Muslim but completely destroy each other's deen. Yeah. And why would you stay with somebody like that for the sake of the community?
Marriage is supposed to be half of our deen, isn't it? So, you know, when you're kind of picking a husband, or even when you're, you know, living together as husband and wife, you know, it's not, there's no shame in thinking, actually, we've got it wrong. We thought it was going to work, and it hasn't. So how do we make the best of the situation? And, you know, subhanAllah, unfortunately, we do still, you know, get it wrong. But I think on this issue of marriage, there's another issue kind of within this framework that can result in a lot of people feeling ostracised. This is this idea of interracial marriages. Again, you know, in this day and age, shocking that this should still be such a taboo and such a difficult issue for us to deal with. But, you know, Sister Nusrat, unfortunately, this is still the case, isn't it?
You know what, Liz, it is shocking. And actually, it's something that, considering the racial plurality in Islam, really something that should not be an issue, because, you know, the Prophet ﷺ addressed this in the last sermon. It's even been addressed even within Quranic verses. But I think the issue is, when we internalize it, yes, we can realize this, and theoretically it's something that we realize, but the problem is when we don't implement that in our hearts and minds and in our actions. But the root as to why women who are ostracized because of this mainly boils down to two things: cultural cultural perceptions of race and ethnicity. Because particularly a lot of people may actually understand, our understanding of race and perception is mainly from the media sometimes. This influences our thinking. So, and particularly within the Muslim community, there has been some issues of people of a form of neo-colonialism. So this idea that fair is beautiful, that's something that very much permeates within the Muslim community. And because of that, it impedes people from actually joining together, people from different races coming together. We see even derogative terms that are used to address people, like, for example, the name Abid. And it's not necessarily, do not confuse it with Abdullah. Abid, a derogative word used for people of darker complexion to denote slave in a derogative way. Not slave of Allah, slave as in kunta kinte type slave. That's exactly, you know, in Roots, for example, that type of slave. And this is the problem. This is something within the American Muslim community they're talking about very much. Al Jazeera, the stream, talked about it under the hashtag being Black and Muslim. Dawood Walid is also a person within the Council of American and Islamic Relations, and he actually is the executive director of the Michigan branch. He talked about it as well. Omar Suleiman within his khutbah, if Trayvon went to the masjid, that's something that shows that actually race is still an issue that permeates within the community.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, you know, it kind of makes me think that actually we refer to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the best of example, and, you know, the Sahabas around him as you know, examples that we should be following as well. But we're kind of not following that advice because we're seeing all these cases. And I'm sure, you know, Sister Farzana, in your work, have you come across issues like this of interracial marriages, you know, resulting in problems?
To be honest with you, actually, no.
Alhamdulillah, I'm glad to hear that.
We have many women that are in interracial marriages, and they're okay.
Yeah.
You know, alhamdulillah, so that's not so much of an issue. I think it's more of an issue in the community.
Yes.
It is an issue in the community, for sure.
Nationalism is something particularly that we have to deal with, this staunch adherence to it, and it's become quite ingrained within some members of the Muslim community. And this shift in thinking, alhamdulillah, is getting better, particularly with the younger generation, but it's still something that we need to address with the older generation.
Yeah.
Again, the Prophet addressed that as well.
Absolutely, educating ourselves and everyone around us, inshallah. What an insightful discussion we've had so far. Right now, we're off for a quick break, but do stay where you are, as we'll be right back after this. Before we go, here is a reminder of this week's competition.